This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to learn more about how Surfshark lets you browse the web freely and securely, plus get an additional 4 months for free when you sign up using offer code SKILLUP at surfshark.com/skillup.
What is there to say about Concord that hasn't already been said? I really mean that, by the way. We did an impressions video on the beta about a month ago, and perhaps unsurprisingly, not a lot has changed since then. That open beta was essentially the most free Concord will ever be, and even then it peaked at under 2,500 players. It's clear there wasn't much hype surrounding this one, and with a $40 box price, I think we all suspected that the official launch wouldn't fare much better. So the game released officially last week, and it actually performed astronomically worse than I imagined. The latest addition to Sony's live service portfolio, with their funding and over 8 years of development, launched to a measly peak of less than 700 concurrent players. To put into perspective just how bleak that is under half of Redfall's peak player count, lower than Babylon's Fall, which is now literally dead, and even lower than the complete and utter disaster that is the Golem video game. Now obviously that isn't totally indicative of the population, given it's also released on PS5, but it is still a decent yardstick for where the full launch has landed, marking it as perhaps the worst performing live service launch in video game history. Having now spent about 20 hours with Concord, I can tell you that those numbers are not indicative of a bad video game though, unlike all those other games I mentioned. While weighed down by its unimaginative maps and modes, some needlessly obtuse mechanics, and a pricing model that feels completely out of touch with the current gaming landscape, Concord is a fundamentally solid game in its tight moment-to-moment gameplay and impressive production value. But that stuff almost doesn't matter, because live service games like this literally live and die on their player population. I mean, the ones that have failed to find success have been dropping like flies over the past few years. So even though I've generally enjoyed what Firewalk Studios have delivered here, with that cost of entry and such a middling player base, the future for Concord looks increasingly dire, and that factor makes it very hard to recommend. I'll break this review into 2 parts, the good and the bad. Let's start with what I liked about Concord, because I do think that Concord, at its core, is a fun video game. To begin this block, we should obviously talk about Concord's presentation, because it is genuinely top class. I'll talk about the character and map designs later, but at least on a technical level, Concord is undoubtedly impressive. That's apparent from the jump. The game opened to the same cutscenes we saw in the beta, boasting remarkably detailed character models and stellar animation work that Sony's big hitters are known for. Very few games contain cutscenes with facial capture this good, and the subtle movements of every eye dart, furrowed brow, and lip pucker go a long way in making these characters feel believable.
There is no one I would rather traipse across this crazy galaxy with than you. You are the finest starship in the skies.
It's not just the pre-rendered cutscenes that look good, because even the in-game character models flaunt that same level of detail to an almost staggering degree. Environments look equally crisp, and I haven't had any problems with performance either, though I am admittedly playing on a rig equipped with a 4080, so your results may vary. Despite this being a multiplayer-only PvP game, a commendable amount of work has been done here to provide some narrative dressing and world building. The story behind Concord is kinda novel. The galaxy is essentially filled with space pirates, one of which found a map that enables light-speed travel between systems and shared it for free before their demise. Now the pirate crews can roam and plunder as they please, no longer under the boot of the Galactic Federation. You can look through that entire star map for yourself in this dedicated menu. It's cool that that's in the game, but it's just filled with massive text blocks that don't contain anything particularly engrossing, but the actual cutscenes that enlighten you on some of this lore sport character moments that I honestly found quite charming by virtue of the animation and voice acting. Unfortunately, it's impossible to know whether this story goes anywhere, given it'll be drip-fed through weekly cutscenes like this one. That's right, Firewalk have promised to deliver cutscenes like this every week, something that even the biggest live service games are unable to do. I mean, it's likely they can keep this cadence up for now because they've worked on this for like 8 years, so they've likely got all the cutscenes stocked and ready to go, but this is surely unsustainable in the long term, both in terms of cost and player retention. Cutscenes like this are bloody expensive, and I know Sony has a lot of money, but do they have the bandwidth to make 52 of these every year? I doubt it. And as much as I dig this space pirate setting, I mean, Treasure Planet is one of my favorite films of all time, a time-gated story pieced into weekly 2-minute cutscenes isn't likely to keep me invested, but only time will tell. The best part about Concord, though, is unarguably the moment-to-moment gameplay. The gunplay, in particular, is fantastic. The developers of Concord previously worked on games like Battlefield and Destiny, and you can definitely feel that. The recoil and handling of each weapon feels appropriately distinct, from the kick of a hand cannon to the unrelenting barrage of a Gatling gun. Hit registration is solid, every headshot and kill provides satisfying feedback, and the hitboxes themselves are actually quite generous, allowing for a low skill floor. Coupled with slick modern movement tech like sliding, clambering, double jumping, and dodging, there's an incredibly solid combat foundation here with a high enough skill ceiling such that every match feels like an opportunity to push your mastery. I remember booting up Apex Legends when it first released and thinking, damn, this just feels good to play. Safe to say I had the same reaction here with Concord. Character kits are also really great, each with neat gameplay loops that pull inspiration from all corners of the FPS genre. One character feels like you're playing Rainbow Six or something, you know, equipped with a traditional assault rifle, popping smoke nades that only you can see through when aiming down sights, allowing you to easily hold down choke points or cover a team push. Another feels like I'm playing a warlock in Destiny, soaring above the battlefield with an explosive crossbow, slinging firewalls to shut off entryways or finish off an enemy that's escaped around a corner. Some feel wholly unique though, like this walking Roomba who plants down fans that can blow away all incoming projectiles and can suck up enemy deployments to fuel his trash bombs. There's a well-balanced roster here, all offering both offensive and defensive utility, none feeling too railroaded into specific roles. There's even a Titanfall-style time trial mode to practice with their kits. Where all of this really shines is in the Rivalry playlist, where there are multiple rounds and no respawns, similar to something like Valorant. It's here that ability usage requires more consideration, as deployables like healing pads and traps will persist between rounds. And because in this playlist you'll be locked out of characters you've won rounds with, you need to make use of their kit while you can. You also need to use those abilities more sparingly here, as a lot of them are restored through enemy kills and there's far less opportunities to do that. I've only played a little bit of this playlist, but it was by far the best demonstration of how tight the gunplay, movement, and character kits are here. The raised stakes intrinsically rewards players for sticking together and force me to think about these kits in a way that the other modes don't. Unfortunately, I suspect over time it'll get increasingly difficult to appreciate this side of the game. I literally could not find a single match in this playlist during the early launch period, and at the full launch, matchmaking for this takes about 5 minutes long. It's honestly not too bad at the moment, but yeah, I think that competitive game mode needs a vast player pool in order to prosper, and with player numbers dwindling such as they are, that might be a struggle in the future. All the characters being able to pull their weight when it comes to damage and defenses works perfectly in that playlist, but a side effect is that you're not exactly encouraged to work cohesively as a team across all the other game modes. In fact, there are some weird systems here that almost discourage that kind of play, a real problem for a game that's advertising itself as a team-based hero shooter. This is where we get into the bad stuff. So Firewalk Studios have clearly positioned Concord as this middle ground between a casual team shooter like Overwatch and a more hardcore competitive one like Valorant. It facilitates both styles of play through its modes and character kits, and while I do think that works for the most part, there are some design decisions here that seem to almost work against the team shooter conceit. In the modes that have respawns enabled, trying to meet the needs of your team is a bit of a nightmare. First off, instead of having the traditional tank support support damage archetypes, you've instead got like 6 of them. You've got a Anchor, Breacher, Haunt, Ranger, Tactician, and Warden, but these are not categorized in any way at the character selection screen, so you've just got to remember their nondescript icons or hover over each of them. But the respawn timer is so bloody fast that you almost have no time to do this, and then you can't swap again until you die. This is a problem because while the roles themselves aren't as important as in something like Overwatch, you do need to navigate them for their crew bonuses. So each of these roles essentially provides a buff like a faster dodge cooldown or increased movement speed, and these persist for the entire match. What struck me as completely baffling though is that whenever the game refers to your crew, it is not referring to your match-made team of other players like you might expect. It's referring to your character roster only. So if I play a tactician who grants faster reload speed, that does not apply to my team. It only applies to me. So the idea here is that throughout a match, you're meant to swap between these roles upon death to stack up these bonuses for the next character you pick. By the end of the match, you've kind of got like a buffed up character. I mean, this is just so strange. It's clearly an effort to encourage experimentation and learn multiple characters, but it results in a number of issues. For example, if there's a character you particularly like playing, like say the Roomba robot, but you want to give him faster movement speed because he moves as fast as an actual Roomba by default, you would need to play as another character that provides that buff first and then swap to the Roomba after you die. So if you're not familiar with those characters, or your team actually needs the Roomba to help clear traps, then you're almost griefing your team in order to do this. Then there's the issue where if everyone's jumping between multiple characters, the ones you want to play could likely be locked in by someone else when you get to that character select screen again. This happened to me on many occasions. On top of that, because all throughout the match people are chopping and changing for these buffs, it's like impossible to figure out which gaps in the team actually need filling. This mechanic is more manageable in that rivalry playlist because all players pick their characters as a team at the start of a round, but I still feel like this would have been far more effective if these were just team-wide buffs to promote cooperation. I'm sorry to say that the confusion does not end there. Let's talk about character variants. In essence, these are alternate versions of characters, just with a different passive ability. So for example, there's this mushroom guy. One variant increases his reload speed while sitting on one of his spore deployments, but another variant drops spores on every enemy kill. To swap between these variants though, they need to be placed in your roster via this crew builder, because each variant takes up a separate slot. Again, this kind of makes sense in the rivalry mode because you're locked out of a character if you win the round with them, acting as a sort of handicap that the other team can try to catch up. To get around that though, you can play as a different variant, allowing you to keep playing your favorite character, but with a different passive ability. The supposed trade-off is that by putting more variants in your roster, you have less characters in other roles to switch between for the buffs in the other modes. So as per the in-game guide, it's recommended you make multiple crews to facilitate various modes, playstyles, or friend groups. You still with me? Doesn't that sound fun? No. No, it does not. I feel like these are such needlessly obtuse systems that only make sense in that single competitive playlist, which, as I said, will struggle to find players in the long term. Like, why isn't the variant thing just a loadout system for each character? Why do I need to build multiple rosters with multiple copies of my favorite characters just to work around how differently these playlists operate? I kinda get what they're going for here by trying to inject some variety, but the game constantly forcing you to switch between all characters makes cooperation and personal growth much harder than it needs to be. What also holds back this game are the maps and modes themselves. Simply put, they're just kind of boring. There are 6 game modes here, each of them some version of zone control or deathmatch. They're practical, but nothing too exciting, nothing you haven't seen before. There are 12 maps at launch, which is a good amount, and they're by all means functional maps, but they feel so laser focused on providing a competitive play space that they're completely absent of any visual flair or distinctive landmarks. This game is set in a universe filled with endless planets, solar systems, and alien races. They could have gotten really wild with these environments, going for striking visuals like the Guardians of the Galaxy game, or implementing all sorts of unique gameplay opportunities like zero gravity or a giant creature slamming the arena, I don't know. Instead, all of them are just these utilitarian military shooter maps, which is a real shame. Characters also don't have ultimates. Now, I can respect Firewalk's decision to not include these. It makes matches feel like a true test of skill, but without any game-changing side objectives, there's none of those big plays that can make even your losing matches memorable. Despite Firewalk's efforts to promote gameplay variety through some questionable systems, these bland maps and modes, combined with the lack of team synergy in most modes, all leads to the game feeling rather stale rather quickly. With such a solid foundation in its moment-to-moment gameplay and visual polish, I might have looked forward to playing more if Concord had some cool rewards to earn. Hell, I played like 20 plus hours of the Marvel Rivals beta, and that had literally like 2 maps and modes, but those character skins were peak. Alas, Concord's rewards are very not cool. At a baseline, the character designs are just not great. They really lack any visual appeal in the sense that they just don't have interesting characteristics that speak to their capabilities or personality. Like the environments, you've got this crazy, wacky universe, and the best you can come up with here is green cat girl in a crop top. They're all just like regular humans or humanoid aliens in either a spacesuit or 80s disco attire. That is the extent of the character design here. I get that's the vibe they were clearly going for, you know, the lo-fi, retro, sci-fi aesthetic, but that doesn't mean they couldn't be adorned with more identifiable features, like this one can fly, fire rockets, and titan slam the ground. Where's her jump jets? Where do the rockets come from? How does she slam the ground without shattering her entire arm? I know I sound nitpicky, but my point is, take away their guns and you would have zero sense as to what these characters do. It's kind of hard to get attached to any of them in that sense, which is often a core part of hero shooters, particularly when we talk about progression. I mean, the big moneymaker in these games is always, and always has been, cosmetics. And here, they can all be earned by just playing the game. That's awesome, except all the cosmetics are bad. Like, they're just bad. It's mostly all just recolors. Each character has one legendary skin that changes a bit more, yet often makes them look even worse somehow. Then there's some accessories, weapon skins, poses, emblems, all the fluff under the sun to pad out those progression paths. It goes without saying that this sort of thing is subjective, but at least to me, absolutely none of this is appealing enough to push for. Firewalk have also confirmed that a cash shop is on the way to fund future content. I mean, who knows how that'll be priced, but you can bet those cosmetics will be much better than the earnable ones. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder though. I think some people would have still happily paid for all these things had they been able to actually try the game first and experience the gameplay for themselves. That is how all free-to-play games operate, really. And if it was a free-to-play title, I might have recommended giving this a shot, but the pricing model really holds this back. Concord released for $40. Now, you probably could have gotten away with that 8 years ago when Overwatch launched at that same price point. In fact, I'm personally more partial to that pricing model. I would rather pay the money up front to be able to earn everything from playing the game. But times have changed, man. Like, video games do not exist in a vacuum, and the competition is especially fierce right now. Overwatch, Apex, Valorant, Marvel Rivals, Destiny 2, hell, Valve's new Deadlock. Say what you will about some of these games, but they're all similar experiences with more to offer, and they're all free to play. I think Concord would have struggled even as a free-to-play title, given that you really need some special sauce to break through the saturated PvP shooter market, and this game doesn't quite have that. But with a $40 barrier to entry, yeah, that's just not gonna fly, and the disastrously low peak player count is indicative of that. While a game's popularity doesn't typically factor into whether or not I recommend it, in the context of a live service game that can be pulled offline at any second along with everything you've paid for, and that this is a PvP game that requires a diverse player pool across all kinds of regions and skill levels to thrive, It really does matter. I feel like 8 years of development was more than enough time to tidy up the rough edges and to reassess the pricing structure, so it's disappointing to see it release in this way, undermining what is otherwise a solid game crafted by some clearly talented developers. Like genuinely, if you enjoy how Destiny plays, or you want a more laid-back Valorant-style game, I think you'll be well served by Concord. But ideally, you should wait for a sale or when it inevitably lands on PS Plus, and then enjoy it while it lasts, because I do fear that Sony will pull the plug on this one, meaning that your $40 will vanish into the live service ether, leaving you with nothing but a JPEG in your PS Plus or Steam library. For that reason, I cannot recommend Concord.
VPNs are the kind of thing that you hear about and you go, that's not for me. But chances are good that a VPN is actually very helpful to you for a variety of reasons, and I know that because I've been using this video sponsor Surfshark VPN for years now, and I'm constantly surprised by how often it comes in handy. More than anything else, I appreciate the safety that comes from Surfshark VPN, since it encrypts your data to keep your personal information safe. If you're playing games, for example, Surfshark VPN will hide your IP address, which, depending on the game, might have been accessible, opening you up to DDoS attacks. The thing I use it for the most, though, is sidestepping geolocks. Surfshark VPN lets you browse the internet without being locked out of things based on your location. That applies to streaming services who geolock certain TV shows or movies, but it also applies to online shopping, since prices can often be different from one geography to the next, and so Surfshark VPN can help you get the best possible price when making a purchase. I actually use the full suite of Surfshark products, and there's quite a few of them that offer even more security and protection. Stuff like an antivirus, an anti-malware tool, real-time reports if a company that has some of your personal data gets hacked, and even a masked email generator that lets you create dummy emails when you want to sign up to something but you don't want to hand over your actual email address. Best of all of this is incredibly cheap. I really recommend clicking the link below to see just how inexpensive it is to properly protect yourself online. For real, if this gives you access to just one regional pricing discount, that'll probably go a long way towards this paying for itself. It's insane value given the freedom, discounts, and peace of mind, and if you use offer code SKILLUP at surfshark.com/skillup, you can get an additional 4 months for free. That's surfshark.com/skillup using offer code SKILLUP at checkout for 4 additional months free. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.